From Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine in Cleveland, Ohio, this is the All Access Med School Admissions Podcast. Hello again, everybody. I'm your host, Christian Essman, and I'm the Senior Director of Admissions and Financial Aid here at Case, and it's great to be with you again. And I'm bringing you a special episode today about the AAMC's situational judgment test called Preview, a Professional Readiness Exam. As you'll hear in our conversation, it's been piloted for the last couple of years with a handful of medical schools in the United States. But starting this year, a number of schools using this test has expanded quite a bit. And I felt that since this test is going to be used by a wider group of medical schools and therefore impacting many more applicants, I thought you might like to hear a little more about this test from some of the people at the AAMC who created it and are helping to administer it. So there are 18 schools participating this year that's 2022, 2023, in the preview exam, and some are requiring it as a part of the application process and others are recommending it. So look at the full list and it's delineated out there, and you'll find a full list of the schools in the description of the notes of this episode. And of course, you'll find a full list on the AAMC's preview website, so you can find that there too. So check it out. So as you're looking at the list, you might be wondering, Christian, you're hosting a podcast conversation about this test, and you, Christian, participated in some of the evaluation and scoring of the test questions. Scratching my chin, why isn't Case Western a participating school? That's a fair question. Well, the truth is, we were really close to participating this year, like about to sign the agreement. But the way we wanted to use the scores and the score release dates, we felt just didn't line up this time with our application review process this year. But I'll tell you, we're working on it with the AAMC, and we'll hopefully be joining up with them next year. All right, so enough about us. Let me tell you about my guest today. The first person that you'll primarily be hearing from at the beginning of this conversation is Dr. Rebecca Fraser. Rebecca is the Director of Content Development within the Admissions and Selection Research and Development Program at the AAMC, or the Association of American Medical Colleges. In her role, Rebecca leads development of content for new assessments, tools, and other resources to support medical school admissions and residency selection, including needs analysis, job analysis, and competency modeling, item development, preparation materials, and guidance and training for end users. She also supports operational planning, administration, and research of new assessments and tools. Prior to joining the AAMC, Rebecca was a senior personnel research psychologist at the U.S. Office of Personnel Management for 10 years, where she conducted job analysis studies and developed a variety of assessment tools. Rebecca has her bachelor's in psychology from the College of New Jersey and a PhD in industrial and organizational psychology from George Washington University. Also in our conversation, you'll be hearing from Lisa Peters. Lisa is Director of Preview Operations at the AAMC. She has more than 20 years experience working in not-for-profit admissions testing, primarily in the business school admissions arena. She has a background as a technical project manager, and she then shifted to project management and customer care, so she has always had an eye for technical improvements. Lisa has a passion for improving the test taker experience and incorporating their feedback whenever possible. And she pays special attention to the behind-the-scenes process improvements to support a better experience for the test taker. While she's new to the medical school arena, she came to the AAMC because she feels the organization's mission is critical for the future of our community. All right, now you know a little bit about them. Now let's learn a little more about the preview exam together. Enjoy. Hello, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. Before we get started, I think it would be a good idea for our listeners to hear some brief introductions from you so they can start to identify your voices. So, Becky, do you want to begin?
Sure. Thank you, Christian. My name's Becky Fraser. I work at the Association of American Medical Colleges. I am a director within the Admissions and Selection Research and Development Group. And my particular role with regards to the preview program is content development. So my team leads content development, all of the test content. We develop that in collaboration with our technical experts as well as our medical school educators. And then we also support both examinees as well as medical schools in preparing to take the test and then consuming the information, such as scores that we provide around the test.
Great. Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Peters. I've recently joined AAMC, working with Becky as director of the preview exam operations. So my responsibilities have to do with making sure that the vendor relationships are going well, that we're delivering the test properly, that we get the scores out to the right people, and to work on more practical applications for the exam.
Wonderful. So we've assembled to talk about the AAMC's newer preview professional readiness exam, right? So we're going to cover the what's and the whys and the hows and the whens and anything else we can come up with to help pre-medical students and advisors, maybe even some medical school people to help them kind of learn more about this newer exam. And so we're recording this just a couple weeks from the first administrations, right? So it's kind of around the corner. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a very timely conversation that we're having. So in preparation, I have some questions, things I want to know more about the exam. I looked on some of the pre-med forums to see what pre-med students were asking. So I tried to pull in some of their questions. So hopefully we can get some of those answered. And so we'll just kind of, start right off the top and just the kind of the bigger picture. The preview exam is what's called a situational judgment test, or you might hear us call it SJT too, as we're talking here. So what are these designed to do?
Yeah, great question. Every day we are confronted with situations that elicit our reaction or require us to make a decision. A situational judgment test is designed to assess your judgment in a situation, just like it's named. SJTs are often, they often present a situation as well as a list of possible courses of action. And then you as the examinee, you might be asked to choose the most appropriate or the least appropriate action, or you might be asked to evaluate the effectiveness of possible actions to that scenario.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about how all the nuts and bolts of this work. So Becky, why would you say these kinds of exams are important? Like, why do we have them?
Sure. Well, situational judgment tests, or SJTs, they are a proven method of assessing many competencies, including interpersonal skills, teamwork, ethics, problem solving, decision making, just to name a few. They really give applicants an opportunity to demonstrate their understanding and their judgment related to these important areas, and also offer insight into an applicant's readiness for a job or in this case, an educational opportunity. Yeah. So prior to getting together and prior to our conversation about talking about getting together, I did some research and learned that SJTs, they've been around for a while. I mean, this is not something that's brand new that the AAMC has invented. This is something that's been around for a while. So, can you tell us, what are these exams designed for application for medical school? Like the situational judgment tests have been around for a while. So can you give us some context as to how else they're used? Absolutely. And you're right. These are not new to, they're not new in general to assessment. They may be newer to the medical school context, but certainly not new as far as assessment is concerned. Situational judgment tests might be used in sales positions to evaluate the aptitude to interpersonal communication or problem solving. Management at an organization might use them when they're considering promotion to evaluate leadership skills. Some of you may have experienced these if you applied for a customer service position, where they're used to kind of understand how you balance company policy with customer satisfaction. Hospitals might use them to see if applicants have the temperament that's required to handle high pressure situations in the most effective and moral way possible.
Yeah, that's important. Okay, so now we have a little bit of the background or context about these tests and what they do. So tell me, why did the AAMC decide to develop the preview exam?
Well, medical school admissions teams understand that success in medical school is not solely reliant on academic preparation. It also requires strong professional and interpersonal skills to develop the necessary clinical capabilities that are needed throughout medical school, throughout residency training, and also as a practicing physician. These skills are not consistently apparent in medical school applications. And where they are addressed in the application, the information is not generally easy to use. Most often schools assess these kinds of skills during interview after many applicants have been removed from consideration. So the AAMC developed a standardized evaluation of professional and interpersonal skills that can be incorporated into the holistic review of applicants prior to interview.
Okay. So got it. So when you were designing this new tool, what is the preview exam specifically measuring or attempting to measure?
Right. So the preview exam, it is designed to measure someone's understanding of effective and ineffective behavior related to core competencies that are required for success in medical school, and specifically 8 of those core competencies.
Okay.
So service orientation, social skills, cultural competence, teamwork. Those are all competencies dealing with how someone interacts with other people. Also, ethical responsibility to self and others, reliability and dependability, resilience and adaptability, and capacity for improvement, which all kind of focus on someone's approach to work or learning and development.
I think it's worth noting, so you mentioned those 8 competencies, that there are actually 15 core competencies that the AAMC came up with. What was it, about maybe 10 years ago or so? And I'll put a link to those 15 core competencies in the show description. But 8 of those come from those 15 core competencies. And so medical schools have been using those 15 competencies as kind of a guide to help them. We've talked about, with every med school dean or director I have, everybody brings up one thing: holistic review. And I think we all have kind of steer our holistic review a lot of times around those 15 core competencies to kind of help us decide what's valuable to us at our institution and why, and based on mission and curricular design. So to listeners, I think it would be advantageous to familiarize yourself with those 15 core competencies. Because sometimes I think they're not, they may be buried in the website for some people. Like, they haven't dug deep enough to find what is this and why is it important? So I'll put a link to it in the show description so people can go look at that. But you've pulled out 8 of those for the preview exam. So I like how the correlation works there. So how did the AAMC decide which of these competencies to measure? And so why do you feel they're important for medical schools to evaluate?
Sure. Well, we worked with medical school faculty and staff across the U.S. and across medical schools to identify the key knowledge and skills that are exhibited by successful medical students. And that's how we came to those 15 core competencies that you mentioned. From there, we narrowed down that list to the competencies that are required on day 1 of medical school, and also those that admissions officers are reporting needing better information about during the application process, so that they can truly do holistic review as early in the process as they can to get that more complete picture of an applicant.
And so when you were saying that, what I want pre-meds and advisors to know too is that you're often surveying our admissions offices frequently, like, what do you want to know more about? And because you want to help us get to those points. And so what can you do to kind of tweak things or add things to AMCAS or examples like an examination like this? So there really is a lot of dialogue from time to time to ask us what more we want to know. What else can we learn more about our applicants, and how can you help us facilitate that? So there is a lot of that going on. So when you were when the AAMC was going through the development phase of creating this exam, were medical students in medical schools involved in that development process? If so, how?
The short answer is absolutely. So medical schools and medical students, as well as others, have been involved in the research and development of the preview exam. Once we selected the competencies to measure on this exam, we studied how those competencies appear in medical school. And so we asked medical schools and medical students and residents to share situations where they were observing someone apply one or more of these competencies, either well or poorly. And we've continued to study these competencies, engage these different groups on an ongoing basis to keep the exam up to date, to make sure that we're continuing to measure these competencies in a meaningful way, meaning that we are assessing them in a way that provides valuable information about an applicant's understanding of these competencies to medical schools. Now, medical schools have also played a really big role in developing the test items and scoring those test items. So a diverse group of medical educators, they review all test items to make sure that we're assessing what's important for medical school and that we're doing so as fairly as possible. Medical educators also create the scoring key for all of our test items. So it's not the AAMC that is establishing the scoring key in a vacuum. We engage a diverse group of medical educators to create that scoring key to make sure that the preview exam really reflects and is in alignment with medical schools' standards and expectations for these competencies for their future entering medical students.
Okay, truth be told, I knew the answer to that question, but I had to ask it. But I want people to know I was a part of you, Becky, you know this. I was a part of those groups that we had these like focus groups that would meet, it was like 2 or 3 hours or so. And I want listeners to know that we would go through these questions, the content, and review even very thoroughly, even down to like just some of the words that were used. Like, we don't like that word. What if we made it this word? And we'd all have the conversation about it. And then we'd talk about is there bias in this? What about the sensitivity in this question? Or like, what about the healthcare knowledge? Does this question require too much kind of healthcare knowledge? Like maybe we need to kind of dial it back a little bit. What would a pre-med know about this kind of thing? So it was really an interesting process. And there were people, not only admissions people, but there were student affairs people on these groups, and some people from DEI offices and student affairs, curriculum people on there from time to time from different
That's
groups
right.
Once we're on. So it was really, like you said, like we were an active participant in helping craft these questions. And then it was like, if there was some that we'll get to like how the scoring key works, but it was really fun. It was kind of fun too. It was really fun, not kind of fun, but to work with these other people from different schools and kind of hear people's thought processes was really, really, really cool and a neat experience. So I started to digress there, but like I said, I knew the answer to that question, but I had experience with being a part of that. So Becky, do you think people, test takers, pre-medical students, do they need experience in medical jobs or volunteer work to have an advantage in taking this exam?
We take a lot of steps to make sure that you don't need experience in medical jobs or healthcare to perform well in this exam. The scenarios that we use in the exam are inspired by real situations that are experienced by medical students, like I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. But we take steps to make sure that an examinee doesn't need knowledge or experience in medicine or healthcare or any particular experience to perform well on the exam.
Mm-hmm. So in offering this kind of assessment, what kinds of opportunities do you feel like these types of tests offer medical school applicants?
Yeah, the preview exam really allows applicants to demonstrate in another way or in a different way, if you will, what they've learned and gained through their coursework, through other experiences, some of which or all of which they describe in their application. The preview exam offers additional information about their understanding of these competencies. And when a school is able to pair the preview exam score with other methods or other types of information about pre-professional competencies, it paints that clearer picture of who that applicant is around these pre-professional competencies, but also as an entire applicant as a whole. Medical schools can kind of better understand who this applicant is and what they bring to the table. The other thing that this exam does is that it allows medical schools to assess their applicants on the same scale. So anyone who is taking the preview exam, they are being evaluated in a consistent manner or a standardized manner. And so it provides test takers this opportunity to highlight their pre-professional competencies a way where they can be compared to their peers who are also applying to medical school. And that helps to ensure the fairness of the evaluation process for application review and for admissions decisions.
If people are familiar with situational judgment tests, and their maybe advisors are tuned into this too, that there are other situational judgment tests out there, in particular CASPER. So many students are familiar with CASPER, advisors are familiar with CASPER. That's, if you're not familiar with it, CASPER is another situational judgment test from a company out of Canada called Altus Assessments. And so, how can you tell us how the AAMC's preview exam compares to CASPER?
Well, the two exams differ in a few ways. So first, they differ in what they measure. While both exams focus on personal or professional characteristics, the two exams don't target the exact same competencies. Some are similar, some are different. Second, the format of the exams differ. So the preview exam presents text-based situations and a series of possible actions someone might take in response to those situations. And then it asks examinees to rate each action using a rating scale. So it's a close-ended response. Differently, the CASPER exam presents a mix of text-based and video-based situations. And then it asks examinees to respond in writing or by video. So it includes open-ended or constructed responses. The last key difference, though, is the scoring. The preview exam uses a scoring key that's developed by medical educators, like you described, Christian. A group of medical educators rate, or should I say, they evaluate and rate the actions to each situation or scenario that we present on the preview exam, just like examinees do. They read those scenarios, they evaluate the responses. Their consensus ratings then become the key which we use to compare examinees' ratings and score their exam. Somewhat differently, the CASPER exam engages raters to read and evaluate examinees' open-ended responses because, again, for their exam, they're asked questions and the examinee constructs their response.
So like a written response, or like you said, a video response. And so their raters are evaluating that content. Okay. So, because I knew this, this question has come up. You're probably used to getting that question. So I had to throw that one in there. So you mentioned the closed-ended responses. So can you give us an example of what a preview exam question? What does that look like?
Sure. So here's an example scenario. You are pursuing a 2-week volunteer opportunity at a well-regarded local clinic. When you receive your course schedule, you realize the volunteer opportunity would conflict with your weekly required lab. This is the only time that the lab is offered this semester, so you are not able to make up the lab. Participation in the lab will count toward your grade. That's the scenario.
Okay.
Then you would be instructed, please rate the effectiveness of each response to the situation. So here are a few different responses that you'd have to rate. Skip your lab for 2 weeks to attend the volunteer opportunity. Ask your lab instructor to identify a solution that will allow you to attend both. Attend the lab and investigate if similar volunteer opportunities are available at another time. And so for each of these responses, you would be asked to rate them from very ineffective to very effective.
So when we were going through the groups I was in, we would have those kind of questions. And there was like, for each one of there were 3 responses there that you have to rate: very ineffective, ineffective, effective, or very effective. And so we would do this blindly, each one of us raters, in checking out these questions. And then we'd say, okay, after a couple of minutes, okay, everybody come back. And Christian, you're the outlier in question 1. You said that skipping your lab for 2 weeks to attend the volunteer opportunity was very ineffective, but everybody else said it was either effective or very effective. Why did you think that, Christian? And you're like on the spot, like, well, I thought that like it would be, you shouldn't skip your lab for this. And so we'd talk it through, and then we'd see if we can come to some consensus, or they would say, everybody pretty much agreed on question 2, that would be a very effective response, a thing to do. And so to get back to how you scored this, how the key is developed, it was kind of cool. It's based on the consensus of medical educators and people involved in these processes. So it was an interesting process to see how this has been built. So Becky, you started administering this exam as a pilot a couple years ago, right? How many schools and examinees participated in those pilot projects of this?
I'm actually going to pass this off to Lisa, since she's our director of preview administration.
You're right. We started delivering the exam as a pilot in 2020 and 2021. So there were 2 schools in 2020 and then 6 schools in 2021. So across those 2 years, we've tested more than 18,000 applicants, which have completed the preview exam, which is pretty amazing in a 2-year pilot period. So we have left the pilot program and we are now an active exam. So this is our first year as an active exam.
Okay. So it's no longer a pilot. So how many schools are participating now?
So this year there are 18 schools participating. That list of schools can be found on AAMC /preview.
Okay.
And that'll put you in our website and allow you to find pretty much everything that you need to know about the preview exam.
Okay. I'm there now. So what I'm going to do is I'll put this link to the show description in the show description to, like, they can go see all the 18 schools.
Wonderful.
That are doing that. How many applicants, when these schools signed up, these 18 schools signed up, did you look and see how many applications do these schools all tend to cover? Like, what's the percentage of applicants?
We did. So even though it's a fairly small number of schools, it actually touches onto a large number of candidates. About 65% of all applicants that will be applying this year will be asked to participate in the preview exam. So it's pretty amazing how much,
that's a lot of coverage.
Widely we'll be able to touch. Yep.
Wow.
So it's very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And like I said, at the time we were talking about this, which was early June, the first administration is just a couple weeks away. So
yes,
it's about ready for prime time. All right. So let's get into like kind of the nitty gritty part of our conversation. What I might term like the questions pre-medical students have that I've seen on different forums out there. So here's the first one for you, Lisa. How are these questions scored?
So the scoring key is determined by a group of medical school administrators, the faculty, staff, admissions officers, diversity and affairs officers from all diverse backgrounds. So that's how we determine that.
Okay. And then
scores.
How about this? Because this comes up frequently in standardized examinations. How do you ensure that the correct answers aren't subjective?
Well, good question. Every scenario and item are reviewed by two groups of medical educators. The first group reviews the content for clarity, fairness, and to make sure the assessment provides useful information about the applicant's understanding of competencies. The second group reviews the scenarios and rates the effectiveness of the responses, just like the examinees do.
Okay.
So similar to what you spoke about earlier,
right,
with that activity that you participated in.
Okay. A lot of times applicants want to know, how have you heard medical schools are using these results? Like if I'm taking the test, how are med schools then, going to interpret or use these? Have you heard how schools are doing this?
We have, and I've been able to sit in on several conversations about this, so that we've been speaking to the schools. And so it's slightly different. Schools that participated in the 2021 administration used the preview scores at different stages throughout their admissions process. Some during the application review to select applicants for interview, and some later in the cycle alongside their interview notes, and some later along with their MMI ratings to inform the final admissions decisions.
Okay.
For example, a school that considered the preview scores alongside their MMI ratings found that preview scores encouraged additional consideration and discussion among applicants.
Okay, interesting. So sometimes some schools use them after, so they're invited for interview, and then they were asked to take the preview exam, and then they were using those results. No?
So they're generally, the test takers are taking the exams at the same time.
Oh,
it's where the consideration falls into place.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. I'm glad I asked.
That's right. And something that's really important for, I think, applicants to know is, circling back, schools are really focused on using preview scores alongside other information in the application or the admissions process. They're viewing preview scores as an additional data point, but just one data point among many. So regardless of where they use it in their admissions process, they're typically using it alongside the rest of the application, if it's prior to interview, or they're looking at it alongside interview or MMI ratings, as well as other application information to inform kind of those final admissions decisions. So they're not seeing the preview exam as a silver bullet. They're seeing it as one additional piece of information to help paint that whole picture of the applicant.
Yeah, another data point, always helpful. So, all right, here's one. Do examinees get to see their scores?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
They get the scores the same day the schools do. So when we publish the scores, we notify the schools that the scores are available, and then we notify at the same time we notify the test takers so that they can see, and they see the same information that the schools do.
Okay, so there's like some kind of score report that they get. What's in the score report? Are they told like what the score means and things like that?
Sure. So the score is on a scale from 1 to 9. So they'll get the actual score. They also get a percentile rank, which shows how they did among the pool of all test takers. So they'll see how they performed in terms of the percentages, the number of people that they did perform better than.
Okay. And then there's like and for the MCAT, we get confidence bands. Does it get the same thing?
You do.
Okay.
So, and that confidence band is part of the score report for both test takers and for the schools that are reviewing.
Okay. All right. So very similar kind of med schools, and the students are seeing a lot of the same things we see for MCAT scores too. So,
right.
All right. So let's say, how about this? Let's say an applicant gets their scores back and they're not satisfied with their results. Can an applicant retake a preview exam?
So at this time, you can take the preview exam one time per year.
Okay.
You can take it next year. If you took it last year, you can take it this year. But at this time, it's one time per year.
Okay. And if I'm reapplying to medical school, we in my conversations with admissions deans and directors, we talk about reapplicants, and there's no shame in reapplying. There's a lot of reapplicants every year because it's hard to get into med school.
It is.
So if you're reapplying to medical school, do you have to retake the preview, or is it optional to retake the preview?
You don't have to. You may choose to if you feel that you've had different experiences, or if you feel that you'd like to perform differently on the exam, then you you're allowed to take the test again. And some people do choose to do that. So we have people this year that tested last year.
Okay.
During the pilot. People that tested during the pilot are testing again now that the exam is fully functional grown-up exam.
And I'm sure medical schools have information on their websites about like retaking the preview if you're reapplying and things like that. So you kind of
they will. And every medical school has a different policy around the testing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's better to check with the school that you plan to apply to before you determine what you want to do.
All right. Next, in preparing for this test. So what about test prep? What kinds of test prep resources do you have for students? And are there any other ways that students can prepare for a test like this?
Sure. So we have a full practice exam available as a PDF on our preview web pages. Okay. So it's the AAMC.org/preview.
All right.
The practice exam is free. Now, we'll say that we are looking in the future to be able to provide an interactive tool to allow people to go through that testing. But for today, we have the PDF, and it is a full exam. It has a key and it has explanations for each of the responses. So you'll see a rationalization for each response to help you understand what the question is asking.
Okay.
So I think that one of the most important things a person can do to prepare for the preview exam is to prepare for the technical and environmental requirements around the exam. Remote testing is a lot of responsibility on the test taker to make sure that they have everything set up right. And right before an exam starts is probably not the best time to start looking at those things. So to alleviate some of that stress and to help the check-in process go more quickly, it's better prior to test day to read through the essential guide, to go through the web pages and make sure that you understand everything that's expected of you on testing.
Okay. So you mentioned remote test taking. So I want to come back to that though. So that, cause that's something that I had not heard about before. There's that terminology, remote test taking. So we'll come back to that, but let me ask you to this. Do you think there are particular experiences that can get a student ready for this kind of test?
So because we are a young exam, we don't know definitively what experiences are more or less helpful, but it is something that we're studying and planning to study moving forward. What the wide variety of experiences that people have do expose them to different competencies. Some may be through coursework as you prepare for medical school, and other experiences like volunteer programs, sports, music, jobs. What the test takers have told us is that ethics classes, anthropology classes, clinical experience, volunteer programs, peer counseling, and a lot of other experiences are things that made them feel more comfortable as they took the exam.
Interesting.
And that helped them respond to the previous scenarios. So it may be helpful to go through your own experiences, to review those, whether you're speaking to others about those experiences, or whether you're reflecting on them on your own, to help you prepare for answering these real world scenario questions.
There's not one thing you can go do, or two things you should like drop everything and go do these couple of volunteering things or experience things that are going to help you for preview. It's kind of a culmination of drawing from your experiences. But I think this maybe gets back to those competencies that we talked about, because you mentioned that. And
absolutely.
And again, it's worth spending a little bit of time going over those descriptions of the competencies, and then kind of be thinking, how does this relate to you and your experiences? What can you draw from with regards to these competencies? So, all right. Okay. A few more questions here. What kind of feedback have you collected from the previous test takers over the last couple of years? What have they said? Like, what do they like? What did they recommend you all should change with this test?
Sure. We've collected a lot of feedback. We collect feedback on an ongoing basis so that we can better understand the experiences of our examinees and find ways that we can improve the exam and the administration and the program. Many test takers thought the questions were reflective of situations they might face in medical schools. So that's good. That aligns with one of our goals for the exam. We want it to be realistic and also, offer useful information to our medical schools. Some test takers report that the system setup and the check-in were a bit challenging for them, which is why Lisa has stressed one of the important steps in preparing is to go through the system prep prior to exam day. Okay. Be ready for and go through the steps you would take prior to exam day so that you are all set and you are comfortable and ready to go. You can troubleshoot in advance. Mm-hmm. Some of our test takers wonder if the answers are subjective. Now, as I mentioned before, we do engage a diverse group of medical educators, and it is a group, and they must show agreement or consensus, if you will, around the effectiveness rating that becomes the key for each item. There are some conflicting opinions that we receive. Not everybody is in agreement on their feedback and around their experience. For example, some think that providing a justification for their response might help to improve or enhance their score, while others prefer the more quote unquote objective scoring that we use on the preview exam, objective, so to speak.
Yeah.
Let's see. Many test takers have also reported that finding an appropriate environment to test was difficult for them. So we're investigating ways to provide perhaps a hybrid testing environment in the future, recognizing that can be a challenge and wanting to make sure that folks are in a comfortable environment where they feel they can perform well on the exam. And then still some test takers question if there may be a disadvantage to people from diverse backgrounds.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So then, let's talk about this. So then looking at those previous testing results, did you find any different groups of examinees that perform differently on the test?
Sure. It really depends on the group. So we evaluate how different groups of examinees perform on the preview exam on an ongoing basis. It's a part of all of our research and all of our evaluation of each administration. What we've observed is that there are small differences for some groups, and there are also no differences for others. So, for example, there are small differences between Black and Hispanic examinees and white examinees. Mm-hmm. And there are also small differences between male and female examinees. However, we found no differences in performance when we've looked at socioeconomic status, whether someone grew up in a rural environment, or based on someone's English language proficiency.
Okay, so you identified some small differences with regards to race and ethnicity and gender. So what have you done to try to eliminate that or maybe diminish those differences?
Sure. We're always trying to reduce these differences and we'd love to eliminate them entirely. That's what we strive for. As we develop the content, we engage medical educators very intentionally who represent different backgrounds, who represent different medical schools and different applicant pools, so that we have folks looking at the content through different lenses to try and make sure that we create an exam that is as free from bias as possible. So all of our content is reviewed for bias and sensitivity as part of the editing and review process. Content can't move forward unless it passes that bias and sensitivity review. Now, as we continually evaluate differences and we see differences in between groups and their performance, we're also exploring these differences to better understand why we might be seeing them and to try and identify ways that we can reduce them. So one example would be, in addition to the medical educators who are reviewing for bias and sensitivity, Separately, we asked experts in areas like diversity, bias, anti-racism to review our test content to see if they could identify any language or topics that might be contributing to differences, so that we could kind of further explore and also inform how we write and how we review our test content.
Great. Okay, you two. So I'd say we're kind of in the home stretch here. I've got just a few more questions to get through, but before I let you go, I want to get into some of the nuts and bolts of taking the test. So these might be some quick hits, but so I'll just real quick. Number one, people want to know, how much does it cost? What does it get me?
So the registration fee for the preview exam is $100, flat fee. It includes the exam and unlimited score sending.
Okay. So if I'm applying to 10 of those 18 schools, I pay my flat fee at the time I'm registered for the test. And then when my scores come, it just goes. I don't have to do anything else. There. No additional money out of my pocket. All right.
Yeah. And the scores are included in the AMCAS. So when the schools go to pick up your other scores or they go to review your other application fields, then your previous scores will be there as well.
Okay. Oh, speaking of fees, is there any type of fee assistance programs?
Yes. So the preview exam participates in the AAMC fee assistance program. So people that have been approved for the AAMC fee assistance program will have their fee waived for the preview exam.
Okay. So that's at the time that you applied to AMCAS and applied for the fee assistance program. So if you received the fee assistance program at the time you applied to AMCAS, initiating your med school application, this will automatically get you the fee assistance for preview.
Yes.
Okay. How about this? What if something comes up, I'm scheduled to take it and I need to reschedule or cancel my exam? What happens then?
So you can reschedule and you can cancel your appointment. Reschedules are limited to the window that's been designated you can see on our website. So there's a schedule that prior to the exam date, there'll be for each test date, there is a designated reschedule.
Okay. I'm actually looking at it right now on my other screen. So yeah, there's like there's a table and there's current appointment with the dates and then reschedule to a same or later window. And it tells you what those dates are. Yes. And then when you can cancel 24 hours before your appointment kind of thing. So
yes. So you can cancel 24 hours before, but the reschedule, you need to plan a little bit before you reschedule an appointment.
Okay. A little bit ago, Lisa, you had said remote testing environment. So
yes.
Where is this exam administered? Do examinees need to go to a test center? Can I take it online? What's the technology?
At this time, all preview exams are delivered remotely, which means that you, as a test taker, identify the location where you're going to test. So you assume the responsibility of adhering to the rules, to making sure that your technology and the security is set up as designated by, you can find the designations on the website, or you can find it in Preview Essentials, which is a document that summarizes everything that you need to know about the preview exam. So it's really important to visit the website to download that Essentials guide and make sure that you go through it prior to test day. So test takers are responsible for identifying and testing in a private, well-lit room. Has to have a clear workspace. You have a single monitor, so you have to clear additional monitors off your desktop and out of the room. The computer must be on a hard surface, so you can't sit on your bed or on your sofa and scrunch down on your laptop. People have to remove their watches, any non-religious headgear they're going to have to take off. So test takers must make sure that they have a camera that's working on their computer and the microphone that's working on their computer. And those are all things that you can take care of prior to the check-in time. So again, it's certain responsibility on the test taker, but a lot of flexibility about how you can manage that for yourself. So the exam works on PC, it works on Mac. Works on Chrome is our preference. Also works on Firefox, but it does require you to download a extension. So the ProctorU extension would be downloaded to your computer, and you have system requirements. Like I said, the web camera, the microphone, you have to have about 2 gigs of RAM, internet upload and download speeds, 1.5 megabytes per second. And test takers must close all third-party apps. So you can't run, I don't know, iTunes
Spotify
in the background, Spotify or anything else. So you have to have everything closed down, clear it off before you can get started.
So no ball caps, no hoodies, take your sweatbands off. And you have to show like your wrists that you're not wearing watches. Okay. Oh, so like
same as you would at a test center.
Okay.
So you show your hands, you roll up your sleeves a little bit. If you go to a test center, they're going to have you pull your pockets out.
Oh, wow.
But so there's definitely a security component to it. So you scan the room, you show that the room is, there's not a giant camera behind you, videotaping
or a parent in the corner
test, or a parent in the corner, or someone with flags showing you what the answer should be, or, somebody hanging outside of the window. Mission Impossible. So those things are important for us as a test delivery organization, but also important for the test taker to make sure that they have all of those things in place before the time the exam starts. So
you got to do a little pre-work on this. You got to, like you were saying, there's this essentials download on their website that I'm looking at the preview website right now, and I have been looking at it to get ready for today, but everything's all there. I mean, everything that you two have mentioned is right on the front page of the preview site. So like I said, I'm going to put some links to some of these things in the show description, but I will direct you to this because it's all right there. And if you just take the time to read things and then they really explain, just like Lisa was saying, everything you need to be ready for on your test day.
Yeah. And I don't think much of it takes a lot of time. It's probably less time than it would be to drive to a test center. So
and there's things too, like you were talking about internet download speeds, like you're like 1.5 megabits or something per second, megabytes per second. You can, if you've not done this before, there are websites you can do test your internet speed.
Well, actually we have part of the tools that ProctorU provides for us. You click a button and it'll tell you everything you need to know about your computer.
You've already thought of this.
Yep. So it's nice because you don't have to understand any of it. It just gives you a, green light if it's good and a red light if it's not. So the process is very easy. It may seem like a lot of steps, but it's a very easy process to make sure.
Do the ProctorU extension thing that you're asked to download. Okay.
Yep. So when you go to the site, there are several steps we'll ask you to go through prior to test day that will show you.
Okay. So you mentioned, you said something a minute ago. It said remote proctor. So how does a remote proctor work?
So the process, like I said, is very similar to going to a test center where you're checked into the exam and someone checks your ID. So the things that are similar are that you'll be working with the proctor, and the proctor's there to ensure the test security, but also to be somewhat of a customer support person. So they're going to help you through the whole process. So what will happen is the test taker will join a video conference with a proctor, and they'll ask them to scan the room. They'll using the camera on the computer that they're going to be taking the exam with. They're going to ask them to show that they're not wearing a watch, all the things we talked about earlier, taking off the headset, making sure that the video works, making sure that the audio works. They're going to check their picture ID to make sure that the person that's showing up to take the test is a person that signed up to take the test and who's completing the applications for medical schools. And they'll do a quick check on your computer. So you'll share your computer with them. They'll make sure that all those third-party apps that we talked about earlier, that Spotify's shut down and iTunes is not open. So they'll do all of those things to make sure that your computer meets the requirements of the exam and the security rules that that we've asked them to confirm. So once that's done, then the test taker will start to take the exam, and the proctor will watch to make sure that they continue to follow the guidelines.
Wow. So how much time does this test take, or how much time should a student kind of carve out for this test?
So the exam itself is 75 minutes. However, there is a little time for the check-in process. So even if you have everything prepared beforehand, you still have to go through the exercise of showing your computer and scanning the room and all of those things. So it's probably best to block off about 2 hours. There's also, as we've spoken about before, we try to collect as much information we can from test takers. So we have a post-exam survey that we'd really like everyone to participate in. And we've been really lucky and had a lot of people participate.
Okay.
So as we've made improvements and changes, it's important for us to continue collecting that information.
So take the post survey. It's for the good of the land.
It really is. It's for the good of mankind overall. So we really would appreciate that. So the more you can do to prepare your environment and your computer prior to the exam shortens the amount of time that the exam takes. But it's a good idea to block off that 2 hours. So don't plan a lunch date.
Yeah.
An hour and 40 minutes.
All right. What about, what if someone needs extra time for the exam? Do you offer accommodations?
We do. So if the accommodations are provided for test takers with disabilities. So there is a process for getting approval for that. And so if you are a test taker with disabilities, again, you need to plan earlier. So your application is due 30 days prior to the exam window that you'd like to test. We work with the AAMC's MCAT program for accommodations. Because the exams are different, there is a separate application process, but we're working closely with them. So the process is much easier. If you've already been approved for an MCAT accommodation, then it will make the process go more easily. The accommodations that we can grant are a little bit different, again, because it's a remote test versus a test center exam. There are some differences in the things that we offer to help test takers with disabilities.
Okay. And while you're talking, I mean, I look again, that's a big blue button right on the website. It says accommodations, more information here, and you can preview accommodations application. You can hit that and it'll take you right to that spot. Just a couple more here. What if, so for the last 3 years or so, we've all been kind of living on Zoom and these types of platforms. What if the darn internet goes out? I've done all my preparations. I've done everything I pre-planned, and I'm in the middle of the test, and a storm comes, or just for whatever reason, they decide to, like, something happens to my internet, it goes out, and now I'm panicking. What do I do?
Don't panic.
Okay.
So first thing is don't panic. So depending on how long the outage is, so if it's a few moments, then hopefully you'll be put back into your session with the proctor. And in that case, the proctor will help manage whatever's going to happen next. They will either have you continue or ask you to contact us so that we can help you reschedule your appointment for a different time.
Okay.
If there's a longer outage than a minute or two, and you don't go back into the session with the proctor, we just ask you to reach out to us as quickly as possible. So when your power comes back on, when your internet gets connected again, when your phone starts working again, there's a customer service number on the preview pages. Reach out to us immediately, and we'll work with you as quickly as possible to find a solution to help you.
All right. Because I know that comes up when we do virtual interview days. If somebody they lose their connection and they kind of panic, it's like, okay, we're here to help, but don't worry, we'll figure it out, kind of thing. So it sounds like a similar mantra with regards to this.
So don't panic.
Last question for you. How long does it take to get my scores back? And are they we already kind of touched, they are automatically released, right? So how long does it take to get back?
So the scores are released within 30 days of your exam date. So on the same table that we looked at before that talked about scheduling the exam and reschedule, cancel dates, there's also a publication for the scores listed.
Okay.
So you'll see, based on the date that you test, you can see the date that your scores will be released.
Cool. All right, this is good. You've now helped me exhaust all these questions. So I've gotten through them all. I mean, like I said, when we first sat down, when we started this conversation a few weeks ago I say, hey, let's get together and talk about this. I had questions, things I want to know more about. And like I said, I looked through various places where pre-meds were asking questions about this. And gosh, you know what? I'm finally out of questions. So I hope people find this helpful and informative to give them a little more insight into what this test is and why you're doing it, and most importantly, some of the logistics, because we know now with 18 schools participating, you're capturing what he said, 65%ish, like there's like 40 some odd thousand applicants in that group. So hopefully this helps them kind of prepare and hear voices walking them through what to expect and why these schools are using this test and that kind of thing. So thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Christian.
Thank you. We appreciate you having us.